Hey guys, today we will learn how to graph the linear function. And the goals of this video is learn the definition of the linear function, know the steps to graph the linear function, and determine if a linear function is increasing or decreasing. So, what is the linear function? Linear functions are functions that fit the form f of x equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept, and b is also the initial or starting function value when x equals 0. And m is the slope. M is also the constant rate of change of the function. So how to graph the linear function? The first step is write the linear function in the form y equals mx plus b and plug y-intercept.
Now, the first thing that we want to do is apply our understanding that f of x equals and y equals are the same thing. They both represent the output of the function. So we're actually going to rewrite this function in terms of y equals. It makes it a little bit easier to work with. And now we should see that this y equals equation is in mx plus b form, that slope-intercept form. And when it's in this form, it's actually pretty easy to graph. So we can see that our slope is going to be that -3/4. Okay, and when we have a negative slope, we know that our line is going to be descending from left to right. So we should have somewhat of an idea of what our line is going to look like when we do graph it. And the next thing that we see is that our y-intercept, that b value, is at +2. So we know that the graph is going to hit that y-axis at +2. So the first step to graphing a linear function in slope-intercept form is to plot that y-intercept. In this case, I'm putting a point at +2 on the y-axis.
And the second step is plug new point according to the m.
And now we're ready to build that line from that point. Now that slope of -3/4, I'm going to take the negative sign and push it up to the value in the numerator. Okay, so I put it with the 3 to make it a -3. And if we think of slope in terms of rise over run, as in change in y over change in x, so when our rise is -3, think of that as rising down. We're going down 3 units on the y-axis. And then our run, our change in x, is a +4. So we move to the right 4 units, and then we plot a new point.
The third step is repeat the step 2.
And we can continue to build off of each point, in this case our new point, by repeating that slope. Again, we rise down 3 units and then run to the right 4, and again we plot another point. And if we are applying the slope correctly, we should see that we're building a pretty consistent staircase here. And if we want to plot some points on the other side, on the left side of that y-intercept at 2, we just repeat this process in reverse. In this case, going to the left 4 units, and then up 3 and plotting another point, and we should still see that our points are all aligned, which means that we can construct a line that passes through all the points, and now we have successfully graphed our linear function y equals -3/4x.
The last step is change y into fx.
And just to reiterate, again, the graph that we just constructed is the same thing as the function f of x equals -3/4x plus 2. So remember that y equals and f of x equals mean the same thing, and that's all there is to it when it comes to graphing a linear function, and we'll catch you guys next time.
f of x equals mx plus b, where m is the slope of the linear function and b is the y-intercept. We can determine if a linear function is increasing or decreasing by determining the sign of the slope. If the slope is negative or less than 0, then the function is decreasing. And if the slope is positive or greater than 0, then the function is increasing. So we are going to look at the graphs of these two functions in just a moment, but for right now, we should be able to recognize that for this first function, the slope, or m, is equal to -2, and therefore the function is decreasing. And for the second linear function, f of x equals 3x plus 1, the slope is +3, and therefore the linear function is increasing. Let's take a look at the graph of these two functions to get a better understanding of what it means for a linear function to be increasing or decreasing. If we first consider f of x equals negative 2x plus 7, if we wanted to graph this, notice how the y-intercept is positive 7, which would give us this point here. And then again, the slope is negative 2, or if we want, negative 2 over 1. So from the y-intercept, if we went down 2 units and right 1 unit, we have another point on the linear function. So notice how, as we move from left to right, the graph goes downhill, and therefore the linear function is decreasing. We can also say that as x increases, y decreases, or using our slope, notice that y decreases by 2 every time x increases by 1. We know this because we have a negative 2 in the numerator and a positive 1 in the denominator. And remember, the slope of a line is the ratio of the change of y to the change of x. Or we could also say the change in the function value to the change in x. And then looking at the second linear function, f of x equals 3x plus 1, notice how the y-intercept is positive 1, giving us this point here. And then because the slope is positive 3, if we want 3 over 1, from the y-intercept, if we go up 3 units and right 1 unit, we have another point on the linear function. And notice how the line is going uphill from left to right, and therefore the function is increasing. We can also say as x increases, notice that y also increases, or more specifically, again, because the slope is the ratio of the change of y to the change of x, we can say the y value or function value increases by 3 every time the x value increases by 1.
Now have a practice. You can use online graph calculator like MathSui and Desmos to graph by yourself.